My future sister-in-law tried to ruin my wedding. Caught her red-handed. What would you do if your future sister-in-law hated you so much she tried to sabotage your wedding dress, cancel your catering, and even humiliate you in front of family? Hi, Reddit. My name is Anna, I'm 28F, and I thought I had finally found the love of my life. My fiancé, John, 30M, and I have been together for 3 years. We met through mutual friends at a charity fundraiser. He was charming, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth for someone who came from a big, tight-knit family. I grew up in a quieter household, only one sibling, not a lot of drama, so meeting his family felt like stepping into a world that was louder, closer, and maybe a little more chaotic than what I was used to. At first, I admired it. I liked the warmth, the energy, and the way everyone seemed to have inside jokes and old memories. His parents welcomed me kindly, his cousins treated me like one of their own. But then there was Emily, John's older sister. She's 33F, married, a mother of one, and the kind of person who enters a room like she owns it. Everyone listens when she speaks. She has that confidence that can feel either magnetic or suffocating depending on the day. When I first met her, she gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was polite, but assessing, as though I was a product she was reviewing before deciding whether to approve. I tried not to take it personally. Some people are just slow to warm up. Or so I told myself. In the early months of dating John, her comments were subtle. Things like, "You're different from his usual type," said with a tilt of her head and a faint smirk. Or, "Well, if John's happy, I guess that's what matters," with a tone that implied she wasn't entirely convinced of my value. It stung, but I brushed it off. I wanted so badly to be liked by his family, and John always reassured me, "That's just Emily. She has no filter. She'll come around." But instead of softening with time, her words grew sharper. The first insults disguised as jokes. One night, we had a family dinner at their parents' house. Everything was going well, laughter echoing around the table, wine glasses clinking. Then Emily looked directly at John, gestured toward me, and said, "Wow, love really must be blind, huh?" Everyone chuckled lightly, assuming it was just sibling banter. My cheeks burned as I forced a smile. John told her to knock it off, but he laughed a little too, which made it feel like my humiliation had been shared entertainment. Another time, when I mentioned going wedding dress shopping with my mom, Emily casually threw out, "Make sure they have your size. We don't want an ogre bride." She actually used the word ogre. Everyone at the table went silent for a moment before the conversation moved on. I sat frozen, a tight knot forming in my stomach. Ogre. That word rattled around in my head for days afterward. Each time she jabbed at me, I tried to convince myself it wasn't malicious, maybe just her odd sense of humor. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. She was chipping away at me piece by piece, planting seeds of doubt about my looks, my worth, and even my place in John's life. Conversations with John. Of course, I confided in John. He's my partner, my safe space. But every time I told him how Emily's words made me feel, he'd sigh, put his arm around me, and say, "She's just protective. She's always been like this with anyone new. Give her time." Protective. That word became his shield for her behavior. To me, it felt like an excuse. How does calling someone an ogre protect your brother? How does mocking someone's career or style make you a guardian? Still, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that with time, Emily would see I truly loved her brother and that I wasn't some threat to the bond they shared. So, I tried to befriend her. I invited her out for coffee. I asked her advice about family traditions to include in the wedding. I even asked if she'd like to come dress shopping with me and my mom. Her response? "I suppose someone should be there to stop you from picking something tacky." I laughed awkwardly, pretending she was joking, but inside I felt crushed. After that, I stopped inviting her. And, of course, she used that against me later, telling John and others that I was excluding her from the wedding. No matter what I did, I couldn't win. The breaking point before the engagement party. By the time our engagement rolled around, I was exhausted. I dreaded family events because I knew I'd leave feeling like I'd been through emotional warfare. But I still tried. For John. Before our engagement party, I sat him down. I told him flat out, I cannot keep doing this if you don't stand up for me. If Emily makes another nasty comment, I need you to call her out immediately. Not laugh. Not shrug it off. Stand up for me. He looked uncomfortable but nodded. I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she behaves at the party. Don't worry, babe. It'll be fine. But I was worried. And as it turns out, I had every reason to be. The engagement party was supposed to be a joyful celebration. A chance for our families and friends to come together, toast to our future, and make happy memories before the whirlwind of wedding planning took over. I had picked out a modest but elegant hall, decorated it with fairy lights and soft flowers, and felt, for the first time in weeks, a flicker of excitement. John had promised me Emily would behave. He swore he had spoken to her. She said she'll be nice. Don't stress about it, babe. When she arrived, I almost believed him. Emily greeted me with a smile that seemed, for once, genuine. She even gave me a quick hug, something she had never done before. My guard lowered slightly. Maybe, just maybe, she had decided to set aside her hostility for the sake of her brother. The first couple of hours went smoothly. She stuck close to her parents and chatted with relatives. I circulated around the room, catching up with old friends and cousins of John's I hadn't seen in a while. I breathed easier. Perhaps I had been too anxious. Perhaps this was a turning point. But hope can be cruel. The overheard conversation. It was my maid of honor, Claire, who shattered the illusion. She pulled me aside, her face flushed with anger. Anna, you need to know what Emily just said, Claire whispered furiously. She was by the punch bowl with some friends, and I overheard her. She called you an ogre. Again. In front of people. My stomach dropped. Claire continued, she literally said, John's like Prince Charming, and he chose Fiona the ogre. At least Fiona turned into a princess eventually, but I'm not holding my breath. I felt my knees weaken. My face burned hot with humiliation and rage. At my own engagement party, a night meant to celebrate me and John, she had mocked me like that, loudly enough for guests to hear. Claire wanted to march over and confront her, but I stopped her. The last thing I wanted was a shouting match in front of John's elderly grandmother and all of our guests. Still, I couldn't let it go. I needed John to hear it. The confrontation with John. I found him mingling near the bar and pulled him into the hallway. My voice shook as I repeated what Claire had told me. Tears pricked my eyes, not just from hurt but from fury. John's face shifted from confusion to shock to anger. Are you sure? That's unbelievable. I trust Claire. And it's exactly the kind of insult Emily throws at me when no one's around, I snapped. For the first time, he didn't try to excuse her. His jaw clenched. I'll deal with this. I watched from across the room as he pulled Emily aside. The music was loud, so I couldn't hear their words, but I saw his expression, sharp, angry, uncharacteristically firm. Emily shrugged, gestured defensively, then suddenly grabbed her purse and stormed out. When John returned, he looked grim. I told her that was completely unacceptable. She claimed it was just a joke and people overheard out of context. I told her if she couldn't respect you, she needed to leave. So, she left. A wave of relief washed over me. At last, he had stood up for me. But the humiliation still lingered. Our engagement party, the memory I'd dreamed of cherishing, was now tainted by her cruelty. The aftermath. I pasted a smile on my face for the rest of the night. Most guests didn't know what had happened, though a few noticed Emily's abrupt departure. Claire and my bridesmaids stayed glued to my side, making sure I felt supported. Later at home, John wrapped me in his arms. I'm sorry. I never thought she'd actually go that far, especially in public. For once, he didn't tell me I was overreacting. He didn't dismiss it as just Emily. He promised me. I told her she has to stop or she won't be part of our lives. And yet, by morning, the resolve had softened. He admitted his parents were upset Emily had left, and they begged him not to make any rash decisions about excluding her from the wedding. Emily herself texted him a flimsy apology. "Sorry, I made a joke that caused drama. Didn't think it'd be taken so seriously. Love you." Not a word to me. Not real accountability. Just gaslighting. I told John as much, but he sighed. "Yeah, it's a crappy apology. I'll talk to her again later." Inside, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and dread. How many more times would I need to convince him that his sister wasn't just being funny? How many more humiliations would I endure before he believed me? A seed of fear. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something about Emily's smirk as she left the party haunted me. It wasn't the look of someone ashamed, it was the look of someone who had only just begun. I told myself I was being paranoid. But in truth, I think deep down, I already knew she would escalate. And I was right. After the engagement party fiasco, I thought maybe, just maybe, Emily would keep her distance. She had been called out, embarrassed in front of family, and surely she wouldn't dare push further. But I underestimated just how far she was willing to go. A few days later, while I was at work, my phone rang during my lunch break. It was the bridal boutique where I had ordered my dream wedding dress. I smiled when I saw their name pop up, thinking they were just confirming my upcoming fitting appointment. Instead, the manager's voice was cautious, almost apologetic. "Hi, Anna? I just wanted to confirm you definitely wanted to cancel your final dress fitting appointment?" I nearly dropped my phone. "Cancel? Absolutely not. I have my final fitting next week. I've been waiting months for it. Why would I cancel it?" There was a pause on the other end. Then the manager said quietly, "Well, someone called earlier today, gave your full name and details, and told us to cancel. The call even came from the number we have on file, your cell." My chest tightened. My own number? That didn't make sense. I quickly scrolled through my recent calls. No outgoing call to the boutique. Nothing. And then a memory struck me like a punch. At the engagement party, Emily had asked to borrow my phone. She said she wanted to take a group photo of the cousins. Without thinking, I had handed it over. She had disappeared for a few minutes before giving it back. Cold realization washed over me. She must have looked up the boutique's number, maybe from my email or texts, and called them, pretending to be me. Somehow, she even managed to make it show up as my number on their caller ID. The audacity. The sheer malice. I assured the boutique manager that it was not me, begged them to never cancel or change anything without seeing me in person or using a password. Thankfully, the manager believed me and added a note in their system: "Bride suspects impersonation attempt. Require confirmation." I hung up, trembling with rage and disbelief. Emily wasn't just insulting me anymore. She was actively trying to sabotage the wedding. John's reaction. I called John immediately. He didn't answer, he was in a meeting, so I left a frantic voicemail. "It's Emily. She tried to cancel my dress fitting. Call me ASAP." When he finally called back, his voice was filled with disbelief. "That's insane. Why would she do that? Maybe it was a mistake? Or a scam call?" His doubt stung. "John, your sister borrowed my phone at the party. How else would they get my number? How else would it show up as me? Who else would even care enough to do this?" He was quiet, struggling to process. "If she really did this, it's unacceptable. But we need proof before making that accusation." Proof. Always proof. As though my word wasn't enough, as though the circumstantial evidence didn't already paint the picture. Still, I agreed not to confront her yet. If she knew I was onto her, she might get sneakier. Instead, John and I made a plan: secure all our vendors, locking down the wedding. The next day, I went into full damage control mode. I called every vendor: the caterer, the florist, the DJ, the photographer, the cake baker, even the venue. I explained that no cancellations or changes were to be accepted without a password or in-person ID check. Most vendors were understanding. Some even admitted they had already received suspicious calls. Our caterer said someone claiming to be me had called recently, asking what penalties there would be if we reduced the guest count at the last minute. They hadn't actually cancelled, but they had probed the contract. I felt sick. That confirmed it. Emily was fishing for weaknesses, testing where she could cause the most disruption. I changed every password, added security notes to every file, and even created a secondary email with a nickname only I would know. It felt ridiculous to go to such lengths, but at least I felt a little safer. Gathering evidence. The bridal boutique manager kindly sent me an email summarizing the suspicious cancellation call: the date, the time, the number it came from, the words used. I kept it like a weapon in my arsenal, proof, even if John still hesitated to believe. When I showed him, he looked drained. His usual excuses, "she's just protective, she doesn't mean it," seemed to fall apart in the face of cold, written evidence. He shook his head. "I can't believe she'd actually do this. This is psycho." I burst into tears. "Do you finally see it now? What she's doing to me?" John hugged me tightly. "I see it. I promise, I'll protect you. I'll handle it." But even then, I could sense his inner conflict. He hated facing the truth about his sister. The birthday party disaster. A week later came Emily's daughter's birthday party, hosted at John's parents' house. Part of me wanted to skip it entirely. But I loved that little girl, and John encouraged me to go, saying, "She won't try anything with my parents and siblings around. Don't worry." So I went. For the first couple of hours, everything was fine. I kept my distance from Emily. She ran the kids' games, laughed with her friends, and avoided me. I started to think maybe she had backed off. Then it happened. I had left my phone on the kitchen counter for just a few minutes while helping serve cake. When I realized it, my stomach tightened. I rushed back inside. My phone was gone. I heard a low voice down the hall. Emily's voice. Yes, that's right. The caterer for the, my last name John's last name, wedding. My blood went cold. I pushed open the slightly ajar door and there she was, Emily, my phone pressed to her ear, mid-conversation. Her eyes widened when she saw me. I stormed forward, snatched the phone out of her hand. The screen glared back at me, active call, caterer. 2 minutes already on the timer. Caught. Red-handed. The explosion. I snapped. What the hell are you doing with my phone? I shouted. She stammered, then hissed, I'm not letting you ruin my brother's life. You're not good enough for him. The words sliced through me. So your plan is to sabotage our wedding? Cancel my dress, our food, everything? How is that saving him? Her face twisted. You'll never be part of this family. Not if I can help it. Our voices rose. Family members rushed into the hallway, faces pale with confusion. My future mother-in-law gasped, my father-in-law demanded to see the phone. I handed it over, showing the caterer's number. Emily broke. She screamed, cried, and finally spat out, fine. Yes, I tried to stop this wedding. Because it shouldn't happen. The room fell silent. The truth was undeniable. The hallway at Emily's parents' house was chaos. Children were crying from the raised voices, adults looked stunned, and my future in-laws stood frozen as their daughter's true colors exploded in front of them. I held out my phone to my father-in-law, my hands trembling but steady enough to show the evidence. On the screen, the caterer's number glared back. The call had ended when I snatched the phone, but the log was there. He stared at it, his face tightening with shock and disappointment. My mother-in-law covered her mouth with both hands, whispering, "Emily, no, tell me this isn't true." But Emily, cornered and furious, snapped back through tears, "Fine. Yes, I called. Yes, I tried to cancel things. Because this wedding is a mistake. I'm not going to stand by and watch my brother throw his life away." Her confession hung in the air like a thunderclap. I felt my knees buckle. The cruelty, the audacity, the sheer obsession, it was too much. I turned and walked straight out of the house, past the stunned relatives, past the confused children, past the birthday balloons still swaying in the air. I got in my car and drove. Tears blurred my vision until the road shimmered. I texted John a single line, "I caught Emily trying to cancel the caterer. I left. Call me." John's breaking point. When I got home, my phone buzzed with call after call, from John, from the caterer, even from his parents. Finally, I answered John. His voice was frantic. "Anna, I'm so sorry. I talked to Dad. He told me everything. I can't believe she actually did that." When he came home, his face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He pulled me into his arms and said, "I'm sorry. I failed you. I should have protected you from her months ago." I wanted to collapse into him, but anger held me upright. "You saw it coming. You knew she was cruel. But you kept excusing it. And look where that got us." He didn't argue. He just cried. And seeing him cry, a man who had only shed tears once in front of me before, cracked my own defenses. The fight we couldn't avoid. Later that night, after the shock wore off, we argued. I told him, "If you don't cut ties with her, if you can't put me first, there will be no wedding. I will not marry a man who lets his sister sabotage my life and still thinks she deserves a place in it." John's face crumpled. "She's my sister. I need to understand why." That was the wrong thing to say. Why? Does the why matter? She tried to destroy our wedding. She humiliated me in front of your family and friends. She called me an ogre. She impersonated me. She stole my phone. She nearly ruined everything. And you still want to find excuses? I was shaking, my voice raw with rage and grief. Grow a spine, John. Cut the cord. Or you'll lose me. He broke then. He sobbed, whispering apologies over and over. You're right. I let it go too far. I see it now. I won't let her near us again. The fallout with the family. The next day, John's parents called me personally. His mother's voice trembled with shame. Anna, I don't know how to apologize enough. We had no idea she was doing all this. Please know we don't condone it. We want you in this family. His father was more blunt. Emily won't be at the wedding. Not unless you both decide otherwise. We're deeply sorry. It was a small comfort, knowing they were on my side, knowing they weren't blinded by loyalty the way John had been. But the damage Emily had done wasn't so easily erased. Her husband, apparently blindsided, had taken their daughter and left the party early, furious at Emily. From what John told me, their marriage might not survive this. The sabotage had rippled outward, poisoning everything it touched. The pause. John and I sat together that evening, the silence between us heavy. Finally, he spoke, we need to pause wedding planning. Not cancel, but pause. Until we're sure we're ready. I nodded. I needed space, too. Trust had been shaken. Not just in Emily, that bridge was burned beyond repair, but in John himself. Did I still love him? Absolutely. Could I see a future with him? Yes. But could I trust him to always put me first, to protect me from his sister's toxicity, to choose me every single time? That, I wasn't sure about yet. So I took a few days at my sister's house. I needed clarity. She held me while I cried, took me out for milkshakes at midnight, reminded me that I deserved love without conditions or sabotage. Where we stand now. As I write this, Emily is cut out of our lives. She is not invited to the wedding. She is not part of our future. John has finally, fully, chosen me. He says he won't speak to her until she gets professional help and shows real remorse, which, honestly, I doubt will ever happen. But the bigger question lingers: can I forgive him for taking so long to stand up for me? Can I rebuild the trust that cracked every time he said, "She's just protective," instead of "She's hurting you and I won't allow it"? I don't know yet. What I do know is that I love him. And love, when tested like this, either fractures or hardens into something unbreakable. Time will tell which ours becomes.